Some people are obsessed, actually, with touching up photos before they actually publish them online. What does this mean down the road? We welcome to CJAD 800 Sarah McCrackin. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Lab for Attention and Social Cognition at McGill University. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much for having me.
Tell us about the spark for this study. Why did you become interested in it?
Yes, I became so interested in studying this when I saw some recent statistics suggesting that about 70% of women and 50% of men are heavily editing their photographs before posting them online. And this is really, rather unprecedented. 10 years ago, this wouldn't have happened. And so we still don't understand how that photo editing and whether or not we're aware of the photo editing having occurred, how that changes our perception of the person posting the photo.
How did you structure your study?
So we used a beauty filter on a common social media application to edit images of 60 different women to varying degrees, ranging from no edits at all to 100% edits. And then we took half of those photos, regardless of how edited they actually were, and we put on a label saying that these photos have been edited. The other half we labeled as not edited, and we showed those to participants. And we said, okay, so looking at these photographs and looking at the label of whether or not they're edited or not, can you tell us how attractive you find these individuals? And also, can you estimate, how enjoyable they would be to interact with, what kind of friendship quality they would provide, and estimate their social circle size?
And what were the results? I'm kind of reluctant to ask. What were the results?
Right. So the results are really interesting, actually. As you might imagine, the more that the photographs had been edited, the more attractive these individuals seemed, and the bigger their social circle size seemed. However, unfortunately, this came at the cost of having these individuals being perceived to provide lower quality friendship and less interaction enjoyability. And when those disclaimer labels were there saying that the photograph had been edited, this reduced the positive social qualities that were apparent even more, so that the person seemed to be worse to interact with and that they would provide a lower quality friendship in general.
What's going on in the heads of the viewers then? What are we thinking then when we look at photos and we're told, oh, that's been airbrushed to the nth degree? We're just assuming these people are not very nice and wouldn't be a good friend?
Right. That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I think we're tapping into a little bit of a social stigma around photo editing, where, we're making some kind of judgment call about the types of people that edit their photographs. Though I will say, I think it would be really interesting in the future to look at how your own attitudes towards photo editing might modulate this, because I would presume that maybe for the younger generations where it's much more ubiquitous to edit photographs, maybe this stigma would be significantly reduced compared to an older generation.
Yeah, that could be. The generation that grew up with it might be more comfortable. I'm just wondering, the reason I asked the question is because what is the assumption there? You're looking at a photo that you've been told is edited. Are you assuming the person is vain? Are you assuming the person is insecure and therefore heavily edited? And therefore these people are not really people that you'd expect a good interaction with socially.
Yeah, that's definitely one possibility. There's also some interesting research showing that depending on things like, level of testosterone, it can actually change the structural features of your face, in some cases making them more attractive. And so we seem to be somewhat in tune to changes in personality that are real, that tie into facial structures. And so it's possible that these filters are kind of tapping into that a little bit by artificially inflating some of those features. So we still don't really know the mechanism, but there are a couple possible ways that I could see it going.
So what is the upshot for ordinary people IRL, in real life?
Yeah, so I think the people who are thinking about editing their photographs, they may have the desire to simply seem more attractive, in which case I think editing your photograph is a good way to go. Or they may be looking to, maintain really close social ties and make new friends. In that case, our data would suggest it's probably better to err on the side of caution and maybe edit a little bit less.
which is counterintuitive. Because you think, oh, I'm going to make myself look super attractive and everyone's going to want to be my friend.
Right.
But no, in their heads, they're assuming that you're fake, you're cheating, I don't know. It's a very complex psychological go around in my head as I'm trying to examine why I have these assumptions about people who edit their photos. So where would you like to take your research now?
Right. So in the future, I would really love to expand our participant sample. So right now, this isn't a sample of undergraduate students, but it would be really interesting to look at those older generations who, probably are a lot less likely to edit their photographs and see, is the stigma around it even more exacerbated in those populations? It would also be really interesting to look at sex differences. So most beauty filters are designed to heavily feminize faces. And there might be much more of a stigma around men using beauty filters. So it'd be really interesting to see if there's a difference there in how men are perceived when they're editing photos.
You're right. Well, I hope you take this further, Sarah. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you so much.
Sarah McCrackin, postdoctoral researcher at the Laboratory for Attention and Social Cognition at McGill University. Earlier this summer, the station was taking publicity shots of the staff, and so I had to go and go through this process. They had a makeup artist there, and there was a style person who vetted my outfit, and I had to submit the outfit that I was going to wear, and we went back and forth on what I was going to wear and stuff like that. And when I got the photo back, they sent me a copy of it, and my first thought was, wow, I look good. And my second thought was, I think they airbrushed out all my wrinkles. You end up, embiggening the photo. I think they took all the wrinkles out of my forehead. I think I've been airbrushed, but darn, I look good. Anyway, I think that's going to be up at some point on the CJ 8800 website, those publicity shots that the station took.